Representative Cornelius, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. We finally make it. You and I have been trying to schedule for some time. I know the end of the session can be crazy. I really appreciate you taking the time to come in today. So,
yes, thank you. Thanks for your patience. We have been trying for weeks to get this done.
But here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are. And this, what I want to talk to you about today, at least one of the things, harkens back to an interview I had with the city councilwoman, Natalie Jangla from Nampa, from like last year when the Pride Parade rolls around. And the city of Nampa finds out because I think it was this big, like the news got a hold of them or something. It's like the city council and mayor didn't know about it. Somebody had applied through Parks and Rec for this permit to do this. Anyway, this big brouhaha because it was the same coordinator for, I believe, the Boise City Pride Parade, and they were taking it straight to Nampa, like right into it. So of course, yes. So of course, everybody gets together. They get the chief of police, they get the organizer, they get everybody in the room and say, all right, look, there's no law that prevents you from having a Pride festival. Okay.
Right.
But there are absolutely laws against lewd and indecent behavior. There are absolutely laws against, things like inappropriately shaped popsicles, things of this nature. So they're like, listen, you fly straight, none of this nonsense. We'll have a good time. You jump this line, we're shutting it down instantly.
Yeah.
So everybody was like, okay, great. Everyone's on the same page. So 3,000 people show up to the Pride Festival in Nampa. And 2,998 people show up in good faith to have a great time. And 2 jerks show up.
Yeah.
And the nature of the problem was, of course, these were 2 biological men that had ostensibly plastic surgery to insert female looking breasts onto their bodies. Yes. And then they showed up. One person was completely bare chested. The other person was bare chested, but had pasties over the nipple and areola area.
Right.
And people lost their minds because they wanted these 2 people arrested. The problem with existing legislation at the time that this went down is it's only lewd and indecent if you consider those 2 biological men to be women, because lewd and indecent is a woman walking around bare-chested with nothing covering her nipples or areola. Now, men can do this, right? And that's totally legal. And these were 2 biological men, but they obviously had plastic surgery to appear to be women, at least in some portion of their bodies.
Yeah.
So it was this huge wrangle where it was like, we don't have the legislation in place to address this. You addressed it. You brought legislation. God bless America. These are the wild times we're in. Talk to me about this.
Yeah, it was an interesting.
Could you let me pull this microphone a little bit closer? Okay. There you go. There you go.
How's
perfect.
That?
That's perfect.
Better?
Go for it.
Okay, I can hear me better.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, it was an interesting conversation when I talked to a couple different city councilmen and the mayor that this event was going on in the park, and everyone knew it. Everyone knew the rules, and then there was 2 bad actors and. Council members saw it, citizens, my constituents saw it, and reached out to me and said, why couldn't all the cops that were there just standing around who saw the same thing, why couldn't they do anything? In fact, the chief, I think, was one of the people that was asked. And they said, our hands are tied, because of what you just said. It's not illegal. And especially if that person says he's a man. So he's off the hook. When obviously he wasn't doing that to prove that he was a man. He was trying to show otherwise. Anyway, so we're addressing that with House Bill 270. And that simply adds men that have been augmented chemically or surgically to look like a woman, a female with breasts, can't do this in public. And either can women. So it's a pretty benign sort of bill. It's smallish, but it's impactful. It's saying we don't want this in our society. Just cover up. Do you? We have no problem with that. Just cover up. Be decent.
Or at least cover up like a silver dollar size of your body. Like just cover up.
Exactly. Yeah. Just because there's kids around and you can't prevent everything, but you can be decent in public.
One question I had about this, which was I remember seeing the pictures and I was like, oh my gosh, like talk about distasteful pictures, right? And these, you know, one of the pictures, I believe one of the people was flipping like the double bird to the camera. It's like, just how inflammatory and distasteful. But one question that I've always wondered is, these two individuals identified themselves as men,
Mm-hmm.
right? But nobody like checked. So the legal predicament came from self-identification. And do you think that there's going to be a time in the future where, because again, like that stuck as far as what the chief of police was or was not willing to do? It was like, well, this guy says he's a guy. Okay, I'm not checking. I'm not asking. Like whatever. I can't do anything.
Right.
Do you think that there's a concern with that setting a precedence for people in the future, where it's like, well, however they self-identify in the face of problems like this, it starts to become like, well, this person, let's say, say you have a biological female that's walking around bare chested and the police say something, it's like, I identify as a guy. Now, obviously your bill would correct that, because even if the person identifies as a guy, if you have breasts or whatever, bare exposed, that would be an issue. But just that capacity to self-identify and have the law actually respond accordingly. Do you think that that's setting a bad precedence at some point?
I think the bad precedence is what we have now. So I think I think that clarifies it. This clarifies it, excuse me. Yeah, it does. I think it makes it much easier for law enforcement to step in and say, hey, let's have a conversation. Gotcha. Before, they couldn't even have a conversation. So I think Councilman Sebastian Griffin said this. He said, it's like getting pulled over for speeding. The officer can say, you were speeding. Well, I'm sorry, and I won't do it again. And they can give you a citation, which is what would happen here, or they could choose not to, just give you a warning. Say, well, don't do that. Don't speed again. Or in this case, cover up next time, and we have no problem. So if that should, I hope, fix it. And it's pretty simple fix in that regard. So I don't see a lot of problem with the bill. If you get a really bad actor and they keep doing this, it's 3 times, they could be tried as a felony. So it has some teeth in it, but it's just saying, stop doing that in public.
Right.
Just cover up.
Just stop.
Yeah.
Just stop.
Please stop.
Just stop.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I see people really, it's almost becoming so clear that it's like, Idaho has such a great thing going. Yeah. And it seems that, excuse me, there are people in different areas that are showing up just trying to, screw things up a little bit. It's like, why? Like, what benefit does anybody get from this?
Yeah, it's just the times. If you told me that we were going to have this conversation a few years ago, I would have called you crazy. It wouldn't have happened. Not in Idaho, but it's here. It's here.
When you talk about this, Councilman Griffin's articulation of like, hey, like you can have a conversation with the law enforcement. You get pulled over, you have a conversation, whatever.
Right.
There is a big emphasis in the state about autonomy, freedom, and conversations, and kind of figuring it out citizen to citizen, or official agency decision, like, hey, let's sit on down. One concern that I've heard people have of this particular legislative session is you have more mandatory minimums, which takes away discretion from judges, right? You have more restrictions on local municipalities coming down from the state level, which is a concern, right? Like we have the daycare bill, right? Which is not just taking away state regulations from the daycare industry, which is okay, fine. If the state wants to get out of the way, and again, good or bad, I don't know anything about it, but like the state saying, hey, we need to restrict or stop restricting so much. But then the bill goes farther and says, and by the way, local municipalities are prohibited from adding in their own local requirements. It's like we have more of these things coming down, essentially mandates from the state coming down onto how people should be functioning within the state, how local governments should be functioning within the state. Right. Like, is that something that has a long history in Idaho and I'm just catching like a small snippet of it? Or is there a larger wave towards, hey, let's regulate the state, not from a local level, but literally from the high up state level?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this is something new, just like on our last bill discussion. This is a new thing that I think the state thinks they need to step into a lot of things, and I don't completely agree with that. I still think that the purest form of government is that closest to the people. So federal, state, city, county, that's how it should work. So if we can leave it in their hands to add what they want to add, we should obviously do that. Let's set some guidelines, but if they want to add more into the body of that, in this case the daycare issue, they should be able to do that.
You said on rev and tax, is that correct?
Yeah.
And local government?
Yes.
Okay. The marriage of these two with, I think it was HB 389 a few years ago, Speaker Moyle's bill. This is one that I've talked to many localities about, right? So Mayor Chadwick from the city of Star, other people, and look, man, our area is exploding. We have all kinds of problems, first responder districts and things like this. They're all saying, hey, look, this is a real problem. And understandably, the 389 was designed to address a problem with increasing property taxes that people who have lived in Idaho for a long time, and then idiots like me move here and screw up the whole property tax base. Like, I get it. But like, how do we reconcile this? Because we are, especially in the Treasure Valley, for instance, experiencing unending growth. And Nampa is, I think, one of the fastest growing cities within the state. But its hands are also tied by this bill by 389, as far as what it can do with property tax and how it can support its citizens and its services. Like, how do we iron this one out?
That's a huge question. And I think 389 was passed before I got in 3 years ago, so it's at least 4 years old, 5 years old. It's probably the most talked about bill still. I mean, I hear 389 once a month somewhere, whether it's in a city meeting, whether it's in a county meeting, a fishing trip. I mean,
it fishing trip.
It's
damn 389.
I know. Pretty much everything. I can't catch fish anymore.
But that actually might be accurate. Like 389 may affect local recreation districts or things like that, right?
It can affect everything.
Yeah.
It just ties local municipalities' hands again. I happen to sit on an urban renewal district in Nampa, and there's things, and I believe that an urban renewal district that is already formed, that's what you're charged with fixing up.
Sure.
Urban blight, bringing things up, letting other developers come in, finish it, and taking off. But it gets it ready for that phase. What happened a few years ago with CUNA and Meta was a different story. I think they formed their urban renewal district around Meta after they knew Meta was going to be there, which is probably not the best way to run an urban renewal. So 389 has kind of hamstringed some communities. And I don't know what the fix is. There's got to be something that would strike a happy medium between leadership that really supported that bill and what is actually going on in the community.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And like, it doesn't take a lot to understand, okay, this was the intention of the bill, and this is the clear problem that it was trying to solve. Like that makes perfect sense. So it's like, okay, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Exactly.
Like this is fixing something. But again, it brings on these other issues, right? Like Mayor Chadwick was telling me that Star went from, I think it was like 11,000 people to 22,000 people in 4 years, right? So doubled in size.
Wow.
And the burden on, for instance, the fire system, fire district, emergency, like the whole thing. It's like, we have twice as many people. Like, I don't know what you want me to say. Like, if we had 1 call per day, now we're probably having 2 calls per day. Like, we have twice as many people here, and we're being stretched really thin. And of course, they have mitigation fees and impact fees, but they don't have, for instance, the chief of fire district in Star, Chief Tominski. He was like, listen, we have all the money we need to build a new firehouse. We don't have any of the money we need for salaries. Right. Like we have the one-time thing, but we need the ongoing money. And I get concerned kind of, again, from a local, looking at local standpoints, is like, okay, are we going to start losing services or having exacerbated wait times and whatnot for just fundamental services within our communities?
Yeah, yeah. And 389 has done that. It's just hamstringed communities. Nampa had a fire station that was built, excuse me, prior to that, 389, and it sat empty for years because we couldn't staff it, just couldn't staff it. So the response times to that side of town were way less than they should be by protocol. And, if something were bad to have happened, Nampa could have been on the hook for that.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
is there recourse? Like say it's, a long wait time for an ambulance or somebody and like a life-threatening situation.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't know
yeah,
particularly on that, but
it's not good, whatever it is.
it's not good.
Right.
There are response times I know they try to adhere to, and if it's outside of that, I don't know what the issue might be, but it can't be good.
Gotcha.
Regardless.
I've talked to a lot of people about campaign finance reform and campaign clarity. I had Secretary of State Phil McGrain on a couple weeks back, and again, they're working really hard. Secretary of State McGrain and other legislators are working really hard to figure out, okay, how do we do a better job of bringing transparency to the state of Idaho so people do not get taken so easily by out-of-state communication manipulation? We have the classic examples of, Speaker Moyle and former Representative Chuck Winder, hundreds of thousands of dollars coming after those people. And those are really big figureheads within the party. But then you have other examples like Matt Bundy and Melissa Durant, who were normal legislators and running normal races.
Yeah.
And there was like $100,000 of out-of-state funding that came for anybody but Melissa Durant. And here Melissa Durant is a normal person, great ties to agriculture, all of these things. And she's like, what is happening here? We have that concern, but we also are now starting to look at, okay, we're concerned about people in the campaign area, but once you're elected, we don't care what you do. So there's a bill that, again, we were chatting about before that says, hey, look, once you get elected, you should also have to have some form of transparency with conferences or things of that nature that you submit, travel expenses, who paid for your hotel, who's paying for your meals, who is doing all this, so that you don't there's no capacity once you get elected to have these kind of sweetheart deals with people who kind of wine and dine you.
Right. Yeah. There's a bill that we passed out of the House that I think it's in the Senate now. That would address that. And it actually goes to people who are running for office. So if you're running for office and somebody offers to pay for you to go to a convention or classes or something in another state, that does not have to be disclosed. And this bill would correct that as well. So
Gotcha.
They should know
Gotcha.
where people have been, who sent them, who's paying for it, how much. It's just transparency.
Okay, so I didn't understand that. Again, not the first time I've misunderstood things, to be clear. So I thought this was something more focused on once you're actually in office. But what you're saying, this bill is focused primarily on bringing transparency to those types of things for people that are running campaigns.
It does both.
Oh, it does both.
It does
okay,
both.
great.
So if
okay, so I'm not entirely wrong. Thank God.
No, you're only half wrong.
Okay, great.
But yeah, it covers. So if I wanted to go to a legislative conference in Florida,
Sure,
and it's for insurance people who are also in the legislature, then I would have to disclose that, and we have to disclose that now. But this would just make that clear that if somebody's paying for that, they need to know who it is, whether it's the state of Idaho or
Big Pharma,
Soros.
Right.
Yeah.
So Bayer. It's Bayer paying for you
Yeah.
to be in Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So that's all good. Is that the only thing that people are looking at with continuing to lock down? There's a national conversation about politicians being, like bought and sold. And that's a very concerning thing for most citizens that I speak with.
Right.
Is this the only thing kind of getting at this legislative session with Idaho representatives?
That's all I know about right now but that's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
It's a good start anyway. But yeah, you do hear that about some of the national people, like the Pelosi's of the world or whatever, that go in there making X amount of dollars and they come out 10 years later, multi millionaires.
She missed her calling. Like she could have been the like Warren Buffett 2.0.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
made more money than anyone like ever in the
Right.
history of making money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. And no reason
Off
for who
like
to make that kind of
off
money.
like $190,000 salary or something. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it is
You know, I
fantastic.
think there's still time for me to follow her stocks and do those trades. I don't even own stocks. I've been too afraid, but with her as a guide, I feel like we could
Yeah,
get
yeah,
somewhere. It'd be
yeah.
great.
You'd manage.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
One of the last things we are increasing technology around our just everyday happenings with Idaho, which is great. Streamlining, you know, even for instance, the Secretary of State Phil McGrain has streamlined businesses and continued to work in that way. So you can start a business and register with the state of Idaho in like 15 minutes. All
Yeah,
things,
yeah,
all great things.
yeah.
But there's also a push to do electronic licenses, which is, you know, kind of tricky because people got really weird with E-Verify and whatnot. But there would be very clear value and a value proposition for the state of Idaho for like, hey, you can have a physical license, that's fine, but we'll also offer you a digital license that you can just show somebody off of your phone.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that bill has got out of the House and it's sitting in the Senate now. I think it's getting a hearing this week, maybe next, but I hope it comes out of the Senate because it is a good bill and it does that. It puts our driver's license on our phones electronically. So if you're pulled over, you can literally just show the officer your phone with your ID on it, your driver's license on it. They will have technology that lets their phone, I presume their phone, read ours and in minutes or instantaneously say, yes, Jeff is who he says he is, and there's no issue. So then it's up to the officer at the moment to write a speeding ticket. But anyway, it's going to be easier for law enforcement. It's going to be easier and quicker for citizens.
Sure.
And it's going to, even the C-stores, the convenience stores, tobacco stores, and they're for this because they don't want underage people buying products that shouldn't be buying products. So it's going to serve a lot of people. It's going to help a lot.
Okay. You got to come back to the mic. You're
I-
escaping. There's an escape room upstairs, but
I'm sliding in this chair like
Yes,
you got
slide.
rails on it or something.
go back to the right. Slide. Perfect. Just stay. Just like there you
Yeah,
go.
I'm gonna freeze.
Yeah, you're great.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that with consumer-based things, right? I had really just thought about it from a traffic standpoint, but this goes a real step further because we have a huge problem right now with vaping and
Yes.
vaping products.
Yeah.
Do you and especially, man, so the use of illegal vaping products, either illegal as in they were manufactured illegally or they were purchased legally and then distributed to minors.
Right.
Is there and this one's going out there, so hang with me. Throughout the nation over the last 20 years, there was a push to decrease access to pseudoephedrine, like Advil, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was because it was a fundamental ingredient in illegal methamphetamine production,
Okay.
right? And they did this by, like you had to show your card at, some people did this, some states did this by, you had to show your card at point of purchase when they're like, hey, here you go.
Yeah.
And you can only buy so much in like a specific time frame. Like you
Right.
couldn't go store to store to store, buy the entire collection that
Right.
they had at the store. And that worked really hard to curb methamphetamine production, right? So it was really hard to gain access. Is there any hope or discussion of like, look, we could do the same thing for vaping products? Like if somebody comes and just buys 500 cartridges and 500 individual pens and then goes to the next vape store and buys 500 cartridges and 500 pens, and because they're showing a digital ID and potentially getting it scanned, we at a state level track this person. They're like, there's no way you need 2,500 of these every single day, right? Like you're obviously taking this for distribution in some way. Because I was speaking with Representative Raymond yesterday, and he's very concerned about the vaping distribution and the damage this is causing, all of this with our minors in particular. Like, is there any discussion of being able to utilize electronic IDs for things like that?
I haven't heard of that, but that's brilliant.
Why, thank you.
I think you should write the bill. Yeah, come in and Raymond and I will help you with that.
My God, God bless it.
See?
I'm on board with that.
See how this works?
Yeah, we just got to keep my name off of it. There are plenty of people who don't like me.
But no, that's very valid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a brilliant thing. This whole electronic thing can do that instantaneously.
Sure.
So yeah, why not?
And it again, it is one of those things where, you know, catching a minor drinking a beer on a curb is really easy to do. Right. Like doing the "Hey, mister" thing outside of a drugstore or a liquor store. That's a really easy thing to catch.
Right.
But man, once you slip like a vape pen that looks like a pen to kids, and they're everywhere. The nicotine content, and then the illegally manufactured cartridges that could be laced with fentanyl or you know, deadly quantities of nicotine or damaging. I mean, people having seizures and stuff like these are our young people that are getting addicted to these things, and they have to be getting them from somewhere.
Yeah. This would help a lot.
Look, hashtag 26. We're going to write this bill.
Okay. I like it. Let's get going.
Listen, Representative, I really appreciate you. I know we've chatted about a bunch of things. I know you're short on time today. Is there anything we've missed that you want to hit?
I don't think so. I think the major things are out now. They're in process. There's been some good things across the line this year though, and I'm really proud of the indecent exposure deal. I'm proud of a couple other things we've been working on. So legislature is working hard for Idaho and for our constituents in our districts and our communities. Yeah, I see that every day. I don't care if they're right, left, or center. I see people working hard for their communities, and it's kind of a cool thing to see.
I have never experienced politics like this before. I'm not in politics. I've never run for office. I never will run for office. But I've never tracked a legislative session and talked to so many people about the happenings. And it is a wild time. You have people working, pouring blood, sweat, and tears. You have these wins. You got a lot of losses. You have this burdensome, you know, laborious process, 2 houses, and you got all of this stuff, and people are, even with that, people voluntarily accept they accept the challenge. They take up the charge and try to fight for Idaho. So I agree with you. You got people working really hard. Even if you don't agree with them, it's like they're working hard, man. Yeah.
And sometimes it's really hard, gut wrenching work. You don't know which way of a topic you're going to land sometimes until the last minute. And it's tough because sometimes there's no winner or loser. It's just something you have to get to.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you for what you're doing for Idaho. Thanks for coming in today. Let's do it again.
Okay, let's do it.